Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of our series with James Cook at Bourgeois Guitars. James is a former master foreman of Bourgeois Guitars, and he's currently in the sales department, and he knows everything there is to know about Bourgeois Guitars. So check it out and hope you like it. Heartbreaker Guitars had James Cook of Bourgeois Guitars come all the way out to Las Vegas, Nevada from Maine, and it was awesome to have him in the shop. James showed us all the different body styles and explained all the different guitars, the components, the tone woods, the design, and how the geometry and design of the different instruments affect tone and playability. He was awesome. We showed him all around the shop, had a great time. James explained to us all about the history of Dana Bourgeois guitars, and it was just wonderful to have him in the shop. We got a chance to play a bunch of different Bourgeois guitars, listen to them, have James explain all the differences between the guitars, and it was just a really awesome time. Even had him come out and visit our open mic that we did on Thursday. It was a fantastic time. Woo, I love these big dreadnoughts. Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, that one sounds really good.
Anyway, so what we got here, we've got a, this is a D dreadnought, right? This is an H-tone top over a lovely figured mahogany back and sides. And Mikey, I think you've got a, is that a spruce over Brazilian walnut?
Yeah.
Now that is an O. That is just a small little guy with a whole big sound in it.
That's our second smallest model.
Let's do this real quick before we start talking about these. Let's do the exact same thing we just did, but you play the lead and play it on this, and I'll play the rhythm and I'll play it on this.
All right. I'm looking back.
There's enough to share. Nice.
Okay, so we got a little guy, we got a big guy, and I'm not talking about the dudes, I'm talking about the guitars. Okay, so talk us through these body sizes, these tone woods, James.
Okay, great.
And just help us understand, you know, what to expect from these guitars. I mean, we all hear what we hear, but why don't you just talk about these two guitars a little bit?
Well, the way that our production models break down, there are, you know, a grouping of smaller body guitars, which we say OM and smaller is kind of our small body line, and then bigger than OM, which is basically JOM on up to full size jumbo. And within those, there's a lot of different flavors, and there's a lot of different colors you can paint with. Going from the smallest, this is, like as I said, this is the second smallest. We make one model that's a parlor guitar, which is, excuse me, more of like a Victorian style.
That's a piccolo parlor, isn't it?
That's exactly right, yeah. And that has a very unique voice all its own. A little bit more of a specialty instrument, but man, it has power and complexity in the sound that belie its little size. These guitars are very, very popular as kind of for a very, very comfortable fingerstyle guitar. So as far as the reasons why somebody might select an O size is obviously for comfort.
It's small and it's real comfortable in your lap.
But you don't lose a lot of volume.
No,
you know, it's
you
not.
don't.
It's not like it's missing something. You're not missing anything. Very clear, very punchy too. This particular example of the O is the O150, which is defined by. It's got this very beautiful I'll spin it around one sec. This binding that goes around the head and the fingerboard gives it a really classy look. It also has an abalone rosette, and usually these are paired with some of our nicest woods. In this case, it has such as this, which was some stuff that sat around for quite some time. This is Brazilian walnut. Very, very great sounding tone wood. Mike and I were just discussing how it's got this really dry and punchy mid-range. You know, it's not like this big blooming mid-range. You know, it's got some really nice tight dryness to it. But within the context of that nice open sound of the overall guitar. Dana paired that with an Adirondack spruce top, which oftentimes on the smaller guitars you get really, really stunning pieces of wood because it wasn't, you know, it gets put aside because we primarily build the two most popular styles are OM and Dreadnought. If a top is too small to fit an OM, it kind of goes on the shelf until something like this comes along. So oftentimes the grade of wood that you get in a smaller guitar is much, much higher. Especially true with the O's and the Piccolos because those are our two smallest ones. It might be a perfect top that would go on a really, really fancy model, but it's just not big enough. So it gets put in. So when a guitar like this comes along and we have an opportunity to make kind of a fancy size O, that's what gets pulled off the stack first, so these nicer tops. You can see this one has very, very tight grain, beautiful silking, especially down the center of the soundboard. You know, it's a wonderfully sawn soundboard, and you know, this one actually came together really nicely. The wood pairings, I think, work really, really well, complementary.
And like you said, I mean, this thing, it's the geometry of it. It's a small guitar, but I mean, it doesn't sound. I mean,
it doesn't sound small.
It blooms, it sounds fantastic.
It blooms, it has that nice balance.
It's small, it's light, it's comfortable on your body. I love it.
Well, like I said, I brought another one. So this one, on the other hand, this is, you know, kind of the traditional Dreadnought shape. Dana's been building these for years and years. This is a little bit newer style of the mahogany and spruce Dreadnought. For Dana anyway, we have, this one has, again, it has this really classy binding around the peg head and on the fingerboard, which kind of really accentuates the look of this, but it's not all about the look. The sound also, this guitar has a couple cool tricks under the hood, in that it has a torrefied top, but it also has torrefied Adirondack spruce braces, which some builders, you can request Adirondack braces, which is great for us. We put them in every guitar. To the best of my knowledge, there have, other than a certain run of guitars back in the early 90s, all Bourgeois guitars are made with Adirondack spruce braces standard. The torrefied braces, on the other hand, act kind of in, this is a bad pun, in concert with the age-tone top. The torrefaction process can reduce the mass of a piece of spruce by about 20%. The torrefaction process is a process where it's an additional kilning step. Once the wood is already dry and conditioned, you could go ahead and just build a guitar with it, or you can put it through a secondary kilning effect that is, it basically heats the wood beyond the point of combustion, but it denies oxygen. So it's a kiln.
So it can't combust.
It's a kiln that's a vacuum, an oven that's a vacuum. So it cannot combust. However, the way that it simulates the natural aging process of spruce is that with spruce, normally over many decades, all of the things that are inside the cell walls will collapse and they'll gas out, just like a finish would gas out, or a new car would, eventually all the fumes would be gone. But in the case of spruce, as it ages, the sugars and volatiles and whatnot that are inside the cells actually gas off. It's not moisture content, but they do crystallize and they do get brittle and they vibrate a little bit faster. So what the torrefaction process does is it cooks all that stuff off. So what normally would take several decades of exposure to oxygen is done in a matter of weeks. And so it doesn't exactly replicate the aging process, but it's extremely similar. And so what you get is a soundboard that is at the essence of all that stuff, and I'll spare you some of the science, but it goes in a direction that is reliably lighter weight and is more stiff and has a faster velocity of sound. So velocity of sound is a huge portion to the voicing of Dana's guitars. Everything is kind of viewed through that lens of how optimally can we get this piece of wood to vibrate. And when I say optimally, I mean to its highest potential.
Right.
So going back to this particular guitar, if you have a torrefied top that's 20% lighter weight, up to 20% lighter weight, and you have very, very stiff quarter sawn Adirondack spruce braces that are also torrefied, also up to 20% lighter weight, and then you use a torrefied bridge plate of maple, which is about 20% lighter weight, and you glue the whole thing together with hide glue, what you get is an extremely stiff, extremely lightweight, very responsive soundboard. So because you're reducing the weight but retaining the strength, now the same amount of string energy can drive that top that much harder. You're not losing it all these little directions. You're not losing the strings energy into all the different little areas that it gets lost in almost every guitar. Even these guitars lose string energy. That's why the string doesn't vibrate forever. However, maximizing the relationship between the soundboard and the string is kind of at the heart of why we keep pushing in this torrefied direction.
Right.
So age tone is how we describe all of our torrefaction process, and that's because we are looking for that worn-in guitar sound.
Right.
We want a guitar to sound like it's from 1940 today.
Let's hear that thing, man.
Yeah, give that thing a strum and we'll.
Can we hear it with a pick too?
Yeah, flat pick that thing a little bit.
Sustain too.
Yeah, the torrefaction process has done wonders. Thank you. That sounds great.
Can I ask a question? Explain, this is another one we get a lot of questions on.
Okay, great.
Hide glue. Tell us all about hide glue.
Okay. First of all, there are several different families of it, and they're often broken down by the classification of the animal the glue is made from. So
there's actually variations. Your hide glue is different from this guy's hide glue?
Well, potentially.
Okay.
Potentially. So there's two major reasons that people seek out hide glue, their guitar to be made with hide glue. And one of them, from a modern guitar player standpoint, is much more important. And that is that the way that the glue ages over time, over years and years and years, what some of the traditional aliphatic-based wood glues don't do, they have their advantages. What they don't do is they don't crystallize and dry what a lot of people describe as glass hard.
Right.
It dries glass hard. And the idea there is that extremely glass hard glue joint will transfer sound more rapidly, more directly, from one piece of the guitar to the next, so on and so forth. I do think there's some truth in that, but it takes a very long time for those effects to take hold.
Interesting.
So that's the upside, number one, from a tonal standpoint. And then there's the issue of reversibility. So guitar, for example, violins made 300 years ago, 350 years ago, you can disassemble them and reassemble them without damage.
Because you just heat the glue, right?
You just heat the glue, it turns soft, you pull it off, you scrape the glue off, put it on new, glue it back together, no problem.
Okay, so what about, I get this question too, should a customer that calls, a player calls and wants a guitar, the guitar they're interested in doesn't have hide glue, should that be a deal breaker? I mean, from a tonal standpoint, you mentioned that you got to have a damn good ear to hear the difference.
You do have to have a damn good ear, and this might be somewhat controversial, but I'm going to say that I think it's much less of a factor than people make it out to be.
Okay.
It is very important for the person who wants every single box checked on a guitar.
Right.
If they're the person that wants to make sure that every single aspect of the guitar is as good as it can be, then it's an important box to check.
Right.
But here's how Dana explains this. And I want to go back to the composition of the glues really quickly after that. 80% of the sound of every guitar you play comes down to 3 factors. So a full 80% comes down to the design of the guitar, the overall design.
Do you mean like the geometry of
The geometry, meaning like thickness of plates,
Right,
depth
right.
of body, length, size, all that stuff, scaling, all
size,
the
body
all
size.
of the design things, all the geometry of it. The selection of the materials and the decisions that the builder makes with those materials along the course of building the guitar. And that last bit can't be overlooked, the decisions that the builder makes. Now, if all builders made all the same decisions and all had the same materials, the 3 of us would live in a very boring world.
Right.
Right. Luckily, that's not the case. And so the remaining 20% that doesn't fall into that is all of the other variables: hide glue, type of finish, examples like that. All of those other things, every other thing about a guitar you can think of that affects the tone, that's not design, materials, or builder's choice, all falls into that last 20%. So the high glue, if you need that extra 3% out of the guitar, that's great. Now, Dana's view on this is, it's kind of like if somebody wants it, they can have it. He builds guitars for himself every year, and sometimes he uses it, sometimes he doesn't. We have done tests in the past where we tried as hard as we could to build 2 identical guitars. Not as easy as you'd think. That's a whole digression for another time. But and we had the whole shop choose, and nobody knew which guitar was made completely with hide glue and one was made without. One guy chose the hide glue guitar. We all played them. And if you like this guitar, stand on that side of the room. If you like this guitar, stand on that side of the room. One of the guys on our whole team said that guitar sounds better. So again, that was quite a while ago, and it was before Age Tone came along. It was before the torrefied tops. Dana was really a pioneer of that. He was one of the first guys to use torrefaction in the soundboard of an acoustic guitar. It's been used in guitar making for a few decades. The earliest example I'm personally privy to is Ernie Ball using it for necks on basses and guitars, electric basses and guitars. I don't know where Dana got this idea. I think other builders did do it before him, but he was really the guy that said, this is the wave of the future, so to speak.
Right. Hey guys, if you missed any part of our series with Bourgeois Guitars, just go back and check out. We have 3 parts, part 1, 2, and 3. So do check out the lengthy interview with James Cook of Bourgeois Guitars. Thanks for watching.